Okay, super fun, insightful episode of Good Thinking coming your way.
All
Contradictions are your
about,
superpower.
yes, living in the uncomfortable reality that you cannot simplify your audience at all, and you shouldn't be trying to. And we talk all about that and some fun examples and, get into personal brand or personal careers, but also brands and why they shouldn't be doing it and what they can be doing instead.
Yeah, a lot of takeaways for companies and brands, and it's a great deep dive. Let's stop apologizing for being complex.
Yeah, let us know what you think in the comments.
Would love to hear.
Hey everyone, it's Chris.
And Kirsten.
Welcome to Good Thinking Weekly, the podcast where we discuss the best of the best in brands, marketing, and culture.
Thousands of people, top execs from the likes of Complex, Klaviyo, Walmart, Wall Street Journal, and LVMH tune in every single week.
We run a creative consultancy in Good Co, so we know what it takes to build a good brand.
Subscribe on YouTube, your favorite podcast app, and Good Thinking on Substack for more.
All right, let's dive in.
Here we go. Welcome to Good Thinking.
Hello. Hello from a hotel room somewhere in the world.
And another edition of Where in the World is Chris Danton?
Yes, it's okay. I am in Italy, but I'm in a hotel room. But that's why I have this amazing shadow behind me. And yes, somehow my hair looks like Dr. Becky's. So
Who we're big fans of, by the way.
I do love Dr. Becky, but I'm not a big fan of her hair. So we're not going for Dr. Becky here. But here we are. But that's not what we're here to talk about today.
No, it's not. But entertaining nonetheless. Okay, amazing. So we're digging into one particular topic, good sign, thing that keeps bubbling up. We're not calling it a trend.
Yeah, but I think it's like let's call this one a deep dive. It's a deep dive into something that we've been talking a lot about, right? Like, or I don't know. We'll rename it later, obviously.
Okay, so
tell us what it is.
The opener for me is your contradictions are your superpower.
Right. Which is basically probably something you've got tattooed somewhere on your body, like
possibly, like let's make an appointment. Because I think this is such an interesting topic, and it came up in, various letters. I have a post about it, but I think it's something you and I have been talking about for years.
Yes.
When you launched the letter, it was something like, oh, does it have to just be one specific thing? Can it be all the things that I'm interested in? I just feel like it keeps coming up again and again. And like many great movements, trends, signs, it happens kind of in a personal way. And then it evolves into, okay, this is what the audience wants to see. This is what's happening. And then brands kind of take notice and then adapt to that in a certain way, which I think is exactly what we're seeing.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about it. Like as you sent this topic over, right? Like maybe 2 hours ago. And I was like, great. Okay.
Maybe.
What are we going to talk about? But like, as I was thinking about it, I feel like even when you think about contradictions are your superpower, like I think actually a lot of brands that we can think of that I could easily name kind of embody this, maybe not in exactly the way that you're thinking about it, but actually it's the theme that like, think about liquid death, right? Like liquid death is sort of a contradiction, right? It's like, oh, it's this healthy, it's water. I mean, should we call it a health food? No, but probably it's the ultimate health food. Ultimate health food that doesn't look like it. There's Duolingo that is like, it's an educational app, and then it's like absolutely like, kind of insane. And these contradictions, I think actually like contradictions within brands, when you see it being done, you might actually not really even identify that it's happening, but it's what makes great brands great brands.
Right. It's totally. I think that's absolutely true. And I like sit back and go, why did we accept something that wasn't this, right? Either personally or from a brand standpoint. Like you don't want something that's one dimensional. Like none of us do, right? That's just healthy and doesn't taste good, or that just is like one type of note of a human. Like it's just not interesting.
Right. But yeah, like in a brand book, it's like, oh, like our girl loves, our girl loves to shop at this place, and our girl loves to like this. And I hate those sections of the brand book actually like just make me like absolutely sear with anger. But like, and I think that's the problem, is that a lot of brand books are like, oh, we have this monolithic audience who like just likes to shop in this one place. Oh, we're a wellness brand. And it's like, yeah, like you're super into wellness. I mean, you work out every day. Like, I mean, supplement stack to like rival like basically no one else's. It's but loves a glass of rosé, right?
Sure do.
Like you're a living contradiction. Like you are not the wellness person that every wellness brand kind of sits there and is like, our girl, like she's into non-alcoholic drinks. I can't get you near a non-alcoholic cocktail. Like you're like not interested,
I
right?
mean, I'll try
And
it, but no.
yeah, but it's like I think to you, like it's like, what's the point? Like you could just have a glass of water if you're going to do that. But like I think that is something that brands really struggle with. That is something that just exists constantly. And why can't brands really understand it? Because I think the ones that do it well, they cut through. But it's hard for brands to
Yes.
kind of think that way.
Totally. And I think that's it. And I think what you're hitting on is maybe one of the biggest takeaways of this episode is really around the brand book and around the brand. Because I think, again, like I tie this back to like, I look at it as kind of the human as well as kind of how it then gets interpreted to the brand. There was a desire to kind of control and be able to say, look, my brand fits in this neat box. You can have this book. It's like this particular audience. To your point, she shops at this, is this age, is this demographic. And we were able to put it in this neatly packed container. And I don't know that that was ever true, but I certainly know that it's not true now. And we want something that's much more dynamic, much more dimensional than that. And I think we're seeing it in this amazing kind of, really, really maybe pushing it examples, kind of talking about the ultra runner. How do I pronounce his last name? William Googe.
I thought about that this morning about how to pronounce his name, and I just started heaving. Like I was like, I'm never going to be able to get there. Episode 400 of I don't know how to say this name, but like that one in particular just feels like it feels like a trap. Like,
Right.
I'm going to say something wrong. Yes.
Right. But I love that, like, ultra marathoner and then stops for a beer and a cigarette. Like, yes, please, more of that. And I think that's the reality of what people are. And so again, within the spectrum, it's like now brands are really not just opening up their eyes to that, but there's an allowing of that. And now there's kind of, I think, a celebration of that. And so we need to move away from kind of that brand book, that definition of here's our customer and they fit into this really neat little box. And they're much, much more dimensional than that. And let's talk a little bit about how do you capture that?
Well, I think you capture it first by deciding not to do it, right? Like step one, release yourself from doing this. Because I think actually it just forms out of habit, right? I think it's like people get into this phase of like, okay, like we're just going to do this. And they just sort of like charge forward and they're like, this is the audience and this is how we talk about audiences. And the truth is that we do this simplification process for ourselves, but then you remove the part of makes the brand interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you need to be kind of approaching it from the inverse, like looking for the contradiction and then therefore finding the brand that's in that intersection of the contradiction or the swinging between the two pendulums or whatever analogy you want to.
I'm into the swinging between the pendulums. Yes, please. Great.
Oh, I bet you are. That's where you form the brand, right? Like if you start there, then I think you find yourself in a place where like that's the unique position, right? And I think we've been working on there's a brand that I can think of right now, and when I'm thinking about this brand, the whole time that I'm struggling with this brand that has come to us is I keep being like, who is this for? Like this is not for anybody. This is not for anyone that I know. Like, I just do not know who this audience is. And partly it's because it's been so simplified and sterilized and made into this kind of like, oh, we're this perfect thing and we want to have it all like buttoned up, da 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 da. But then you have no space for, like, is this girl somebody who, is a big reader, but also really into fashion, right? Also really into these other things. Like, it's like, oh, she likes nice clothes. Like this is nothing to go on. And this person doesn't exist. Like this is not a real person. So we can't build a real interesting brand around her.
Right. It's not digging deep enough. Exactly. So that's a great point. All right. So let's back up from that because it was a conversation that we're having. And I think where we'll land on it, where we'll end is like the preciousness of your brand. Like that's gone, but we've got a minute to get there first. Right. So when we do brands, right, we start with the audience of really like, and I think I want to dig deeper into the contradictions and kind of really understanding that, but digging in first of like, who the fuck is this for? Like, we don't believe we can create a brand unless we really know the audience. And the audience for us isn't they're making this amount of money, they're this age, they're, shopping at these 3 stores. It's like, what is the Instagram rabbit hole that they're going down at 3 a.m., right? Like, how are we really understanding that? And I think it's a much different way of doing about it. And then how do we dig in and find those contradictions?
Yeah. I mean, I wrote, I basically wrote the same post as you and didn't post it in time. And then you scooped my post about it. So I was pretty annoyed this morning.
The one
But
time ever that this has happened.
yeah, I was like, wait, what? She even used the image I had? Like, oh.
I
Anywho,
did? I mean, how cute is
yes.
that? Like, yes.
I mean, we're like twinning, except that you stole my post. So I'm kind of raging. But anyway, it's fine. But in it, I wrote about, and again, this example comes from you because I think that this is where I think it's easiest to do. It's like, okay, you love really bougie skincare, right? Like I can
Yes.
sell, I'm a skincare brand. I can sell you anything over $150 if it's got something that you've never heard of before. Like
Yes,
I can sell
this is
it to
true.
you. You are 0% hard to sell to. But
Correct.
you also go to bed without washing your face.
I mean, I've, gotten better.
A lot.
Gotten better.
Yes, but only recently. Like this is like in the last 6 months you've been convinced to wash your face before you go to bed, right? And I think therein lies the contradiction, right? Because that is like so you could say, oh, like on the surface, you look at you and you think to yourself, oh, this person is really into like 12-step routines and she's really, because she's buying all these products, and you simplify yourself, right? And you say, oh, she must be doing this because look, she has these 27 steps. Well, Kirsten is randomly slathering this stuff on her face and hoping for the best. And that is a different consumer. And that is a much more interesting dimensional consumer. And so you can say to yourself, okay, we're a beauty brand that, aspires to the 12-step like skincare routine, but the reality is she's a 2-step routine at best. But we can create a product for this person, right? That's like simplified for her.
And that's so much more interesting because then you're hitting on the humanity, because somebody like me is going like, oh yeah, they're not. And even my sailor's going like, yeah, like nobody wants to be marketed to of another 12-step program. I don't know why we landed on 12 steps, but here we are.
You know what I mean?
But to be like, oh, here's, the cut around or whatever for the 2-step, like that's fascinating to, I think, a lot of people, and feels more human.
Yeah. But also showing that person in a more dimensional way, like through social. And it's not like, oh, like every influencer you have is like, here's me, get ready with me. Like when I've gotten ready with you, you spend 80% of your time trying on shoes and pants and 20% of your time doing your face and your skin. And everybody's different, right? Like I'm over here like recurling my hair for the 400th time and try on one pair of shoes. And this is what the truth is about audiences. And so when we are doing these audience workshops that we do, I spend so much time trying to pull out of the teams that we're working with the fights that they want to have about this consumer. Because I'll start, we'll start talking about it and I'll start asking these questions, trying to pull up the farce.
The uncomfortable
that is the
conversations.
Audience.
It's the best.
Yeah, it's like the made up audience that they think they have. And then we start to get real, and then they start to have arguments about it. No, this is how it really goes. This is how it really goes. Then you can really go and find some truths and then pull on those, right? That's where I think the interesting things lie. And yeah, so I would start with the contradiction over anything.
Right. Totally. I love that. Okay. So to clarify, so what we really do is really digging into the audience, but not digging into the audience in like the typical way that kind of most, brand books or agencies or consultancies or whatever kind of do it, which feels like putting everybody in a box. Digging in to really understand the audience and push for what those contradictions are, because they're there. Those uncomfortable conversations where, the CMO and the actual team are kind of disagreeing, like somebody doesn't really want to say it, but they feel like this one's full of shit and it's actually the customers all the way over here. It's in there. And you do a great job of kind of poking through and pulling that out, really understanding the audience insights, what they're into, what they're not into, kind of all of those parts and pieces, and then really honing in on what are those contradictions and really identifying them.
Because when those contradictions turn up in real life, so when you see Gwyneth Paltrow's new line, which is
we know it.
like a redux of her other line, but renamed. But anyway, that's not the problem. you know, she's showing hand-carved zucchinis with the Gwyn logo, like hand-carved into zucchinis. That works for Goop, right? Then and Paltrow. But then she's also serving platters of cigarettes. And guess what got posted on Instagram like 400 times and got everyone paying much more attention to Gwyn than they would ever have paid to Gwyn ever, is those cigarettes. And the reason that the cigarettes, and it's not to promote secret like smoking, because I know everybody like gets on my case about it, but like it's more that it's that contradiction is what stands out to people. And then they say, that's interesting, there's something going on there. The truth is that girl, she's smoking 1 cigarette a year. And that's her contradiction, right? But it's like she's going to the Gwyn party to have that cigarette, and she's going to have it, and that's okay. She's going to be fine. She's not going to die. Probably dying from
Totally.
the stuff she put on her skin first. So who knows? It's but that's what I think when you see them in the, so at one of the talks at Paradigm, Tom, one of the guys, Tom, he talked about the idea of like the zoo in the jungle, right? And he said like really great ideas don't live in the zoo, they live in the jungle. The jungle is real life, and the zoo is what brand builders think that they're making and building for. And if you build for the zoo, it doesn't work in real life. It doesn't work in the jungle. And the best ideas work in the jungle, not in the zoo. And I think that's why the cigarettes do well, because they work in the jungle.
I think that nails it. I think that absolutely nails it. And then I think that moves us into preciousness. Like companies, brands, agencies, whatever, have worked in this way where it's so siloed and it's so clean, and we have this process and it works for everybody, and we're just going to dig in and we're going to figure out the income and the age and the 3 stores that they shop at and the blah, 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 and we'll tie it up in a neat little bow, and then here's your brand. And everybody's going like, well, great, we have this great brand book, but we can't use it. Like it doesn't get used. We don't understand other than like the space around the logo, because it's not a usable thing, because that's not real. It's not a real person. We have created, and I think that's a great example of creating within the zoo, which, you know, has like so much less depth. And the reality is, for sure, we're living in various jungles right now, and it's only getting more cross-pollinated, dynamic, like all the things.
Yeah. I mean, I think back to our time when we worked with Psycho Bunny, right? And when we were working with them, the team there was like, oh, you know, like for a really long time, they were like, our guy really loves like, you know, loud dressing, da 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 da. And then they spent a lot of time actually in the stores, and they were like, wait a second, actually, the truth is we do have that guy, but we also have this guy over here who's like 55, loves the polo, really like adores this polo and wants to buy it in navy. And they're selling enormous amounts of navy and white polos, like outnumbering every colored polo by a long shot. And you probably were like, oh, that's not surprising. But what was happening is like, you know, this guy was finding out the quality of the polo, and the collar didn't roll, and all the things that he valued about like really good products, right? He was buying them because of that. And then he was having to buy them to go to work and da 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 da. And for a really long time, they were like, this guy, like we just can't market to this guy. We can't live with the fact that there's like these 2 polar opposite people shopping our brand. Like it just did not show up at all in the brand. And they were like really like, ugh. And we can talk about what's happened since, but what we basically were telling them was like, hey, like it's okay that you have these 2 people, and we can market to them in different ways, and those 2 things can live in your sphere, and they don't need to be contradictions of one another, and it doesn't make your brand not real anymore. And like they're like, oh, but like the tagline doesn't work for this guy. The tagline doesn't matter to that guy. He just doesn't care, you know? And I think what's been interesting in watching them since we aren't working with them anymore is they're like, oh, okay, let's try to like merge these 2 and make them meet again. So then we've taken these 2 things, like this one was very distinct, this one had a very distinct need, and they're like, oh, like let's just try to merge them. Let's rationalize this living daylights out of this thing and blend them back together so that you appeal to neither one. Neither one is happy.
Right.
This one doesn't relate to you, and this one is like, wow, this marketing is not for me.
Right.
In my
Totally.
opinion.
And I think that's where the blanding and then the preciousness they don't work. They just don't work. Like, stop doing that. Like, stop whatever you're doing. Like, this is a national service warning. What's that?
PSA.
It's not an Amber Alert, but it's a situation.
A public service announcement.
Public service announcement. Wow, that was rough. To really understand, like, that is not working. That is not going to work. And you have to celebrate and get behind the complexities that are your brand, that are, because they're in there, that are your customer. And then also you gotta loosen the grip a little bit on the preciousness of what your brand might be, because I think you can be surprised and delighted by if you give a little bit of ability to your consumers and your customers and really what they'll do with it and play around with it, versus having to keep everything in this neat little buttoned up brand book, because that's not working.
No, it's not working at all. Yeah.
Uh,
What else do you want to
okay.
talk about?
Well, what
else
I want to
should
talk
people
about
stop doing?
well, I made a few things, but part of what I want to hit on with this, because I've talked to and have a lot of, kind of just independent creative strategists, et cetera, reach out to me. And I have this conversation with them a lot. And again, this conversation you and I have had for years now, as far as, there used to be having to be this one thing and be like the expert at this. And I certainly, I didn't come up that way. I came up like, I'm not a trained designer. I'm not a only this, I'm not an only that. And so it worked better later in my career. But as like a, brand manager telling people like, oh, I've got big ideas, I should be a creative director. Like it was a harder sell, let's just say. But I think,
Yes.
I think both where we've pivoted to from an industry standpoint and what brands need, but also age, really embracing kind of having that duality, having that complex background. And I think you and I have talked about in the newsletter is a great example of it. Like, you have this diverse expertise, experience, interest, and that is a lens versus having to be in one particular category to be successful, whether it's the letter, whether it's, what anybody's title is.
Yeah. So you're talking about like we're pivoting away from brands to
We're
like personal
pivoting
brands
to people.
/ career.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Let's pivot the whole
Yes.
podcast.
Yes.
Here we go.
I mean,
yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think it's well, and I think and unsurprisingly, I'll bring it back to AI, but I think in the age that we're moving into now, right? You have a lot of deep expertise at your fingertips. And so we're going to have tons and tons of people who have like suddenly like I can overnight have like an expertise in performance marketing if I want it. I don't want it, but I can have it. And you can have this kind of very tunnel vision view of the world very quickly now. So I think as things go on, my suspicion, and I think this is why people keep talking about curation and taste and all of these things, is that it is going to be about AI does not do well with contradictions. It's the exact problem that it can't do that. And I think that's when you get into brand strategy and you like, if you try and even do brand strategy and try it inside of ChatGPT, it rationalizes the living daylights out of whatever you give it. It will blend it down to the like, this is the pattern. This is what I see. Like, wellness brand. Oh, they want, this, this, and this. Oh, the food brand, they want this, this, and this. That's what it's an expert at doing, right? So if we start building brands over the next 10 years that are just built on that, you're going to have every single food brand turning out the same, every single beauty brand turning out the same. And the only way that it can really find contradiction is to have experience in contradiction. And it doesn't. And it will never.
Right.
I don't think it can ever, really, because of how it learns. It's learning based on copying things like that. It's iterative of one thing. It's an iteration of it. Is the Andy Warhol of creating brands. Like, takes this, makes you a yellow version, makes you a pink version, makes you a blue version, but it's all exactly the same thing.
Right, but it's Andy Warhol that you gotta hone in on. You gotta be that.
Oh, but then he had the perspective, but it's more that it's just like it's an extraction of the same thing.
Yes.
And I think that people that will be successful in building brands kind of in this landscape are going to be able to pull out those contradictions, and other people, and it will be very obvious for ones that don't.
Right. It'll be almost what we saw in digital, where everything all the fonts, everything just looked the exact same.
Yeah. I mean, it was like once Squarespace came out, right? It was like there was one day before Squarespace existed, right? Where we had different websites. And then Squarespace arrived, and then everybody had the same website within the year, right? That was what happened.
Yeah, 100%.
We all remember.
But I think the AI thing is really interesting, because I went to an AI talk, believe it or not, because of many reasons. It was a friend of mine that was doing it. It was a couple blocks from me. Like, yes, all the things. I might have I'm hoping I was going to run into somebody, all the things. Wow. But anyways, it was interesting to hear, because it was from a tech perspective of building brands. and that look at what AI can do. Oh, look, I tell it to create a strategy. I want the strategy to go after this person. I want it to be this. And seemingly, right, the audience is like, oh, wow. Granted, the audience was 99.9% tech males, not going to say bros, but tech men. There were 3 women, and it was the 3 of us that we knew that, again, we're friends with this guy. And it was fascinating because there were oohs and ahs of like, oh, it's seemingly so complex that you can create a brand. And look, I can do strategy and I can ask to do creative. And you're putting in all this information. It's like, oh, wow, well, that's really detailed and thoughtful and blah, blah, blah. But it's to your point, and I think that's what so many people are going like, oh, isn't this great? AI can do all of these things for us, but we are going to end up with same. And I think everything that we're seeing, certainly contradictions are your superpower, what we're talking about today, is the exact opposite of that. And I think those are the brands, those are the people, those are the individuals, those are the creators, those are the things that are going to rise to the top because they're going to be more complex. They're going to be embracing those contradictions. They're going to be doing all of that. And then the other ones, the Squarespace sites and below, are going to be all doing the same, and it's going to be super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the question is like, how many brands do you think will make the Squarespace site version of their brand and then discover 5 years from now that that doesn't work? I think a lot. I think an enormous amount of brands are heading in this direction. I even think, looking at the ChatGPT, the ad that came out, I don't know if you saw it yet, but it's like, it's the most
the emotional one
thing. Yeah, the new emotional one.
Yeah.
Then it's like, it made me laugh because it almost makes my point for me. They have
will you explain it?
There's many versions of this ad if you see it online, but I'll try to post the one I'm talking about. But essentially, it's this like little vignette, and it's this girl and this guy, and she's listening to this song, and he's like, "Is this a good?" Like, he's obviously made her some food, and he's like, "Is it good?" And she's like, "Yes." And it's just the most contrived. Like, they didn't even hire real actors, obviously. Like, it's just terrible. And then it shows over the top of it like the prompt that he used in order to make a playlist, and it's like, make me a playlist that says that I don't want to be trying so hard, but I really like you, something, something, something. And it's like, okay, so now we're all getting the same cheesy playlist. Like, this is not how you fall in love. The falling in love and making the playlist is about finding the fucking things that are interesting to her and then making the playlist. Like, you don't make the playlist off of a generic prompt. It just made me like, it was like, it writes itself.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the criticism
It
writes
really
itself.
does. It really does. Yeah, that's exactly the point. And I'll totally date myself of like the playlist and getting a mixtape. Yes, a mixtape, people, from somebody was like this heartfelt, like so thoughtful because they picked each song and did all of that.
And takes time.
To have that would be like, fuck you. Like, we're done. We're done.
Like,
some dating app somewhere should get on that and like, let's see something in Times Square of like, let's do a playoff of
yeah,
this.
we do not need that. I mean, and that's my point. And somebody was like, the positive spin on the ChatGPT was like, look at, because Claude also came out with an ad, and they were comparing the two, right? And it was saying like, oh well, Claude's ad is not good because it's like, Claude's ad was about like problem solvers, and I have problems with that ad too. It was like, oh, the ChatGPT positions it every day. And I was like, this is just not like interesting. Well, the problem is that it exemplifies the thing that we hate the most about AI, the thing that we fear the most. It's teach me, like, show me songs about somebody who likes, skateboarding, or grew up in, Santa Fe, like whatever. Like, I mean, you could make a million ways of making this playlist prompt more interesting, but that's not what they did. And obviously it's an ad, so you have to simplify it. But it exemplified the thing that just makes the problem with brands, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's
a great example.
You lose the soul of the entire process of dating. Once you lose the soul of trying to find your brand, I think that's where shit really hits the fan.
Yeah. And lean into that. Yeah. So I think that's a perfect place to end. We got to keep it a little bit shorter today. We have a few meetings coming up, so we don't have much of a window, but I want to kind of recap for everybody because I think that's a perfect place to end. And I think instead of like moving away from those complexities, like really lean into those complexities and start there.
Yeah, start there. I think from there you can make rational, like, brand books and things that you need. But if you start with that, you start with something really, really interesting, and that gets you something.
Yes. Good point. The tools are still the tools, and we need those. They just need to be done in a way where it's actually useful and brands and companies and people can use them versus just sitting on a shelf somewhere. And same thing with the human perspective, like lean into your complexities and contradictions and all of the parts and pieces of you, because you may not be able to see the through thread, but it's there.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Till next time.
Ciao.
Stay curious.
That was it for this episode of Good Thinking. Don't forget to tune in next week.
If you found this valuable, subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast app.
And don't forget to read on Substack for even more insights.
And if you really liked it, drop us a heart. We'd love to hear from you.
Ciao. Until next time.